Good afternoon. My name is Monte Skall. I am the Executive Director of the National Capital Lyme Disease Association. We are a 501c3 nonprofit, and I see some of you looking at our literature. That's the type of education we put out. We've been around now for 16 years offering support and education to Lyme patients, their family members, and the community at large. We have half of our association's membership comes from Maryland, the other half comes from Virginia, and a few people from the District of Columbia. We have been on a state task force here to study Lyme and tick-borne diseases, as well as a local county task force with Ike Leggett in Montgomery County. So I come here today to tell you we support this bill. This bill is very, very needed. It's a simple bill. It does one thing. It informs patients that if their test is negative, it might not mean that they do not have Lyme disease. And they need to go to their doctor, they need to discuss it with their doctor, their healthcare provider, and come to a decision whether they should be treated, whether they should come back for retesting, or they should just follow themselves. And it's a decision that they make with their healthcare provider. Now, we hear on a daily basis from people around the country as well as in our two states here. And over again we hear the same stories, that they did not get treated early enough, or they did not get the proper diagnosis, and they have become chronic. They have problems getting health care coverage. They have problems with people in their families, not being able to get health care coverage. So it's not unusual to see in the same family 2 or 3 people that are dealing with the tick-borne disease. So all this bill is really asking for is to give people the information that the test is not reliable in its early stages. And we do work with the CDC on this issue. As I said before, we work with local county health departments, with your state health department, and this is something that we really feel is very important. And I want to say 2 last things before I stop. It has been brought up that there are many tests out there for Lyme disease, and why are we only concentrating on the one? And that's the ELISA in the Western blot, and that's because that is the test that is used more than any other test for screening. We attended this conference at the Institute of Medicine. Actually, we presented there. And these were researchers from all over the country that came together at the bidding of NIH and the Institute of Medicine to study where the research gaps were with Lyme and tick-borne diseases. And what the consensus was is they needed a good screening test, that they did not have one.
Okay.
Now, this was 6 years ago, and we still don't have that test.
Thank you.
So I'm being told I have to stop. So thank you all very much. I hope you pass this bill. Oh, I'm ecstatic about this today. I think we're really making progress on this bill. It is being modified. We introduced this bill, as Susan said, in Virginia back in 2013, and it passed, and it was a fight over there also. But what I'm seeing now, there's more acceptance, as far as Susan was saying, the senators and even the delegates. People are starting to identify with this disease. And so I'm excited because I see an interest, number one. I see almost a willingness to negotiate and maybe even to build some sort of consensus. And that is what our organization has always been about, to try to get both of these fractions to come together, because it's really the patient that's caught in the crossfire between these two medical camps on diagnosis and treatment, length of treatment, and even co-infections, which we haven't really touched on here. But I've been over here with Susan, but even before Susan started to get involved in this, we were over here in the late 90s and, dealing with legislation. And there's been something almost like 8 bills that have been introduced over the years, and none of them None of them made it out of committee. So I feel very positive.
That's true.
I don't know if you noticed, but they had to tell me my time was up, to stop. And I didn't get to half of the stuff I wanted to say about patients.
That happened
because,
to me in the house the other day.
Because that's what we do. We deal with the patients.
Right.
We pick up the phones. We hear the calls, both Susan and I, and the calls are very sad. And one of the things we didn't mention today, that we lost 2 children last year, both under the age of 2 years old. And one had Rocky Mountain spotted fever, and the child was never tested. It was never even brought up that this could be a tick-borne disease, even though the physician knew the child had been bit by a tick. And the other one was sad too, because that was a 19-month-old that had been treated and had been tested and tested positive, but they wouldn't allow retesting or additional treatment of any amount. And when the child died and the autopsy was done, the organism was still in the brain tissue and the heart. It was very active.
How do you convey this to the folks out there about becoming aware, doing your research, because this could happen to anyone?
We do a lot of civic association events. We speak all over. We have, I think, one of the best sets of published literature out there that we give out to the public. We do government agencies, health fairs, shows. We're constantly educating. That's what we do.
Because this is only part of the fight.
But I will say this, Emily. We are, each one of us has Lyme disease ourselves. And we're, as you might imagine, we're not early Lyme disease patients, we're later. So we're all fighting the disease ourselves. And it really is a passion. It's something that we do because we really feel we're hoping to make a difference with the general public out there and all these young children that haven't been exposed yet, that could be exposed in the future. And
That's our heart.
that's our heart. We believe you educate from the bottom up. Young children are the best teachers. They have the captive audience of their parents. And so we came up with this idea that we wanted, most of us, a lot of us at NatCap Lyme are teachers, educators. And so we said we need to get a curriculum in the public schools. Now Nancy Fox, with her curriculum, we worked right alongside of her and had input. Even though she had 6 practicing teachers write that curriculum, we gave a lot of input into it. And it is so valuable because you take every state out there and you look at it, you'll see almost every state has a Lyme disease problem. But here in Maryland, you're number, I don't know whether it's 10 or 8 or something in the country. You're in the top 14 states for reported Lyme disease cases. So it is huge that children should be educated about this, how to protect themselves. And if you are an educator or you're running a school system, you're at the top, you really should look really hard at this issue. Because children are out on the playgrounds, they do so many activities out there. You have your Boy Scouts, your Girl Scouts. It's just a natural that this is something that should be in the public school system, as well as the private.